Hey guys, it's Josh. Here's the final video that I'm uploading for today, uh, of Chapter 6 of the Silmarillion. Um, if you want to know what happened in the previous videos, go watch them once they premiere. Anyways, let's begin. Now the three kindreds of the Eldar were gathered at last in Valinor, and Melkor was chained. This was the noontide of the Blessed Realm, the fullness of its glory and its bliss, long in tale of years, but in memory too brief. In those days the Eldar became full grown in stature of body and of mind, and the Noldor advanced ever in skill and knowledge. And the long years were filled with their joyful labors, in which many new things, fair and wonderful, were devised. Then it was that the Noldor first bethought them of letters, and Rumil of Tirion was the name of the lore master who first achieved fitting signs for the recording of speech and song, some of graving upon metal or in stone, others of others for drawing with brush or with pen. In that time was born in Eldamar, in the house of the king of Tirion, upon the crown of Tuna, the eldest son, the eldest of the sons of Finwë, and the most beloved. Kuru Finwë was his name, but by his mother he was called Fëanor, Spirit of Fire. And thus he is remembered in all of the tales of the Noldor. Miriel was the name of his mother, who was called Serinde, because she was because of her surpassing skill in weaving and needlework, for her hands were more skilled to finesse than any hands even among the Noldor. The love of Finwë and Miriel was great and glad, for it began in the blessed realm, in the days of bliss. But in the bearing of her son, Miriel was consumed in spirit and body, and after his birth she yearned for release from the labor of living. And when she had named him, she said to Finwë, "Never again shall I bear a child, for strength that would be nourished in the life of many has gone forth into Fëanor." Then Finwë was grieved, for the Noldor were in the youth of their days, and he desired to bring forth many children into the bliss of Almon. And he said, "Surely there is healing in Almon. Surely there is healing in Almon. Here all weariness can find rest." But when Miriel languished still, Finwë sought the counsel of Manwë, and Manwë delivered her to the care of Irmo in Lorien. Sorry, let me get that taken care of. Ah, God. Still trying to get over a cold. Anyways, um, at their parting, for a little while, as he thought, Finwë was sad, for it seemed an unhappy chance that the mother should depart and miss the beginning at least of the childhood days of her son. "It is indeed unhappy," said Muriel, "and I would weep if I were not so weary. But hold me blameless in this, and all that may come after." Some foreboding words, keep those in mind. She went then to the gardens of Lorien and lay down to sleep. But though she seemed to sleep, her spirits indeed departed from her body, and passed in silence to the halls of Mandos. The maidens of Este tended the body of Muriel, and it remained unwithered, but she did not return. Then Finwë lived in sorrow, and he went off into the gardens of Lorien, and sitting beneath the silver willows beside the body of his wife, he called her by her names. But it was unavailing, and alone in all the blessed realm he was deprived of joy. After a while, he went to Lorien no more. Which makes sense because, like, if you really think about it, if you really love someone and they just die in what's supposed to be a very heavenly place, don't you think you would, like, not want to go there? Yeah. Anyways, continuing on. All his love he gave thereafter to his son, and Fëanor grew swiftly, as if a secret fire was kindled within him. He was tall, and fair of face, and masterful, his eyes piercing bright, and his hair raven dark, in the pursuit of all his purposes, eager and steadfast. Few ever changed his courses by counsel, none by force. He became of all the Noldor, then or after, the most subtle in mind and the most skilled in hand. In his youth, bettering the work of Rumil, he devised those letters which bear his name, and which the Eldar used ever after. And he it was who, first of the Noldor, discovered how gems greater and brighter than those of the earth might be made with skill. The first gems that Fëanor made were white and colorless, but being set under starlight, they would blaze with blue and silver fires brighter than Helluin. And other crystals he made also, wherein things far away could be seen, small but clear, as with the eyes of the eagles of Manwë. Seldom were the hands of and seldom were the hands and mind of Fëanor at rest. Now, these crystals that could see things from far away, but clearly, those are the Palantiri, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Do not quote me on that, though. While still in his early youth, he wedded Nerdanel, the daughter of a great smith named Matan, among those of the Noldor most dear to Aule. And of Matan he learned much of the making of things in metal and in stone. Nerdanel was also firm of will, but more patient than Fëanor, desiring to understand minds rather than to master them. And at first she restrained him when the fire of his heart grew too hot. But his later deeds grieved her, and they became estranged. 7 sons she bore to Fëanor. Her mood she bequeathed in part to some of them, but not all of them. Now it came to pass that Finwë took as his second wife, Indis the Fair. She was a Vanya, close kin of Ingwe the High King, golden-haired and tall, and in all ways unlike Miriel. Finwë loved her greatly, and she was glad again. Finwë loved her greatly and was glad again. But the shadow of Miriel did not depart from the house of Finwë, nor from his heart, and all of whom he loved Fëanor had ever the chief share of his thoughts. The wedding of his father was not pleasing to Fëanor, and he had no great love for Indis, nor for Fingolfin or Finarfin, her sons. He lived apart from them, exploring the land of Almon, or busying himself with the knowledge and the crafts in which he delighted. In those unhappy things which later came to pass, and in which Fëanor was the leader, many saw the effect of this breach within the house of Finwë, judging that if Finwë had endured his loss and been content with the fathering of his mighty son, the courses of Fëanor would have been otherwise, and great evil might have been prevented. For the sorrow and the strife in the house of Finwë is graven in the memory of the Noldorin elves. But the children of Indis were great and glorious, and their children also, and if they had not lived the history of the Eldar, if they had not lived, the history of the Eldar would have been diminished. Now, even while Fëanor and the craftsmen of the Noldor worked with delight, foreseeing no end to their labors, and while the sons of Indis grew to their full stature, the noontide of Valinor was soon drawing to a close. For it came to pass that Melkor, as the Valar had decreed, completed the terms of his bondage, dwelling for 3 ages in the duress of Mandos alone. At length, as Manwë had promised, he was brought again before the thrones of the Valar. Then he looked upon their glory and their bliss, and envy was in his heart. He looked upon the children of Ilúvatar that sat at the feet of the mighty, and hatred filled him. He looked upon the wealth of bright gems, and he lusted for them. But he hid his thoughts and postponed his vengeance. Before the gates of Valmar, Melkor abased himself at the feet of Manwë and sued for pardon, vowing that if he might be made only the least of the free peoples of Valinor, he would aid the Valar in their works, and most of all, in the healing of the many hurts that he had done to the world. And Nienna aided his prayer, but Mandos was silent. Then Manwë granted his pardon, but the Valar would not yet suffer him to depart beyond their sight and vigilance, and he was constrained to dwell within the gates of Valmar. But fair seeming were all the words and deeds of Melkor in that time, and both the Valar and the Eldar had profited from his aid and counsel, if they sought it. And therefore, in a while, he was given leave to go freely about the land, and it seemed to Manwë that the evil of Melkor was cured. For Manwë was free of evil and could not comprehend it. And he knew that in the beginning, in the thought of Iluvatar, Melkor had been even as he, and he sought no depths in the not to the depths of Melkor's heart, and did not perceive that all love had departed from him forever. But Ulmo was not deceived, and Tulkas clenched his hands, whenever he saw Melkor, his foe, go by. For if Tulkas was slow to wrath, he was slow also to forget. But they obeyed the judgment of Manwë, for those who will defend authority against rebellion must not themselves rebel. Now, in his heart, Melkor most hated the Eldar, both because they were fair and joyful, and because in them he saw the reason for the arising of the Valar, and his own downfall. Therefore, all the more did he feign love for them and seek their friendship, and he offered them the service of his lore and labor in any great deed that they would do. The Vanyar indeed held him in suspicion. Very smart move of the Vanyar, for they dwelt in the light of the trees and were content. And to the Teleri, he gave small heed, thinking them of little worth, tools too weak for his designs. But the Noldor took delight in the hidden knowledge that he could reveal to them, and some hearkened to words that it would have been better for them never to have heard. Melkor indeed declared afterwards that Fëanor had learned much art from him in secret, and he had been instructed by him in the greatest of all of his works. But he lied in his lust and his envy, for none of the Eldali ever hated Melkor more than Fëanor, son of Finwë, who first named him Morgoth. First time we hear the name Morgoth, keep that in mind. And snared though he was in the webs of Melkor's malice against the Valar, he held no converse with him and took no counsel from him. For Fëanor was driven by the fire of his own heart, only working ever swiftly and alone, and he asked the aid and sought the counsel of none that dwelt in Aman, great or small, save only, and for a little while, of Nerdanel, his wife. Yeah. So, that is all of the recordings that I will be doing today for the Silmarillion reading. I hope you all have a wonderful day. May God bless you, and I will see you in the next video. Yeah. Bye!